Another episode of the Music Educator Live. Make sure I say that right. The Music Educator live stream. And my name is Bill Stevens. I'll be your host today. And I have a very special guest, Miss Theresa Hoover, that I'll be introducing you to. And a couple little things about Miss Hoover. She's an educator, she's a speaker and a writer. She's an advocate for student voice in the music classroom and works to empower students throughout their musical experiences and helps teachers transform their classrooms to become better and become student centered learning environments. So, Theresa has taught music in a variety of settings, most recently teaching middle school band in Northern Virginia. That's where I'm at. Theresa is a Google for Education certified trainer and innovator, frequently working with teachers to help integrate technology into their music classrooms. In addition, Ms. Hoover is the author of the book Empowering Ensembles with Technology, the co author of Pass the Baton, Empowering All Music Students, and the co host of the podcast Pass the Baton, Empowering Students in Music Education. Theresa is currently working towards her PhD in music learning and teaching at Arizona State University, where she teaches undergraduate education classes. So I'm so excited to welcome you and welcome her to the live stream. And here she is. Welcome, Miss Theresa Hoover. How you doing?
Good. How are you today?
I'm great. It's a beautiful day.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
No problem. No problem. So, I'm excited about our audience and having you here because they are mostly music educators, music students, lovers of music. And so we're going to find out a lot of cool things. I know this from you. Can you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Yeah. So as you said, I taught music for I taught in the public schools for almost 20 years, mostly in Pennsylvania and Northern Virginia, like you mentioned. But now I'm actually out in Arizona. I'm in Phoenix working on my PhD.
Ooh.
When I was in the classroom, I was teaching a lot of middle school band, elementary band, things like that. But I was also starting to work with teachers and doing professional development, leading workshops, conferences, things like that, just working directly with educators. And I was thinking, I really like this. I mean, I love middle school band. How could you not, right?
Yeah.
But I was just really starting to get the itch to be working with adults more and to kind of helping teachers make some positive changes in their classrooms. So that's why I decided to go back and get my PhD. So I'm in my second year here at ASU. I get to work with pre-service music teachers, which is really fun. Like
I'm
you can
sure it's a lot
remember
of
back
fun.
to what it was like being in college.
Yeah, absolutely. Wow.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. And it's great.
Well, super. Well, today, and like I said, I'm really interested in this topic. You said you wanted to talk and provide some insights into making ensembles more student-centered. Can you tell
Yes.
us more about that? And yeah,
Yeah.
let's talk about it.
Okay. Awesome. So, like you mentioned before as well, when you were reading the bio, that I co-wrote a book and I'm co-host a podcast called Pass the Baton. And the whole impetus behind that is this idea that, as the teachers, we don't need to be the only decision makers in the classroom. We don't need to be the ones who are kind of making everything happen. We really can put a lot of that ownership onto the students, and we can really give them a lot of opportunities to be in charge of their learning, which makes it more meaningful for them. So some of that comes from just thinking about it in a more student-centered way, right? And what I've noticed is for ensemble directors, that's challenging, right?
Yeah.
Like I don't know, I have my master's in conducting, and I can still think back to like learning how to use that baton to I'm going to use a word I don't like, but kind of control the people in front of me, right?
Mm.
And it's like thinking about that more, I don't necessarily know that that's the best way to go about it, right? So when we think about things from a more student-centered lens, we're thinking about what's going to help all of the students in front of us. How are we going to make the musical experience really meaningful for them in a way that it even pulls it outside of the ensemble and makes music meaningful for them in their lives? How are we thinking about music in a way that it's going to help these students be musical throughout their
Yeah.
lives? Be musical when I'm not standing in front of them saying crescendo now, right? So how are they going to be able to take these skills and make it something that's going to be long lasting, um, even when they're no longer sitting in my ensemble. So that's kind of the idea behind thinking about the student-centeredness, and as I said, I know it's sometimes challenging for us as ensemble directors because we're used to being in control.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. So, how does that feel to you so far?
No, no, it sounds great. I mean, they talk about if you can have a kid take ownership in what you're doing, you're gonna get a lot more out of the student and the ensemble.
Right.
Uh, so can you kinda maybe elaborate on some of the things that, perhaps you've done or
Yeah.
some things that you recommend?
Yeah, absolutely. So for me, it was just thinking about, all of the things that I do during a typical rehearsal, typical class period, or even like concert cycle, and thinking, how can the students be more involved in that? How can they take a more active role in the making of all those things happen? And one of the really easy things is simply thinking about your warm up. For a lot of us, our warm ups at the beginning of rehearsal are things that we do pretty consistently. We've got our
Mhm.
scales, we've got our long
Routine.
tones, we've got our, right? Does that have to be led by me? Would be the first question. And the answer is usually no, right? Um, like the kids know the concert B flat scale. They know the Remington. They know the could you put a student in front to lead that? And really, it's that simple. Just starting with, okay, this thing has become routine. They don't truly need me. How could I let one of the students take charge of this? So you start off by just saying, like, hey, who wants to lead long tones today? And at first they'll all just stare at you, right? And you have to just
Mhm.
just wait. Say, no, no, I'm serious. Who can hop up here and lead the long tones? And then eventually somebody will volunteer and they'll get up. And you kind of see the kid will like walk up, shoulders down, and then they hop up on the podium and suddenly they're standing a little bit taller.
Yeah.
And the rest of the class that maybe wasn't really paying attention now is watching because they're really intrigued, like, what's gonna happen? And they take this and they run the warm up. So just starting out something really simple like that and letting a student have that little bit of leadership. After you've done it a bunch of times, then maybe you say, okay, hey, today we're going to be working on this piece. Who wants to lead a warm up? Oh, and pick which one we're going to do.
Yeah.
Then the kid has to think like, okay, am I going to pick my favorite? Am I going to pick something that makes sense? Am I going to, and they have to think through that process of like, what should I do today? Um, and so you're kind of like scaffolding this to get the students ready. One
Okay.
of my favorite moments, and I talk about this a lot in PDs. I've been doing this, getting kids up on the podium. Oh, and I'll say, sorry, I'm
Oh,
moving
please.
around.
Yeah, yeah. That's
A
how it
lot of
works
times
too.
when somebody else is on the podium, I'm either in the ensemble playing, like I'm sitting next to the saxophone players or, hanging out in the percussion, or I'm fixing something, or I'm doing all of those other things, right,
A
that
great time to do
inevitably
it.
happen. Yeah.
Yeah.
So we've been doing this for a while. The kids were kinda used to it, and this one quiet little clarinet player comes up and she's like, Miss Hoover, can I tell you about a warm up we did in my old school?" And I was like, You could." And she starts to describe it. I was like, "Wait, Emma, can you just teach it to the ensemble?" She goes,
There you go.
"Oh, okay." So she
Alright.
hops up on the podium and I said, "Okay, everybody, Emma's gonna teach us a warm up." And the class went silent and they all eyes on Emma, and she taught this little warm up. It was a scale type thing. And then
Okay.
from then on, it became the Emma. It was the Emma warm up.
The
So
Emma
we
Award.
would
Hey,
have
I'm sure they
class.
felt good about that.
Oh, she loved it. She thought it
Yeah.
was great.
Now,
So go
do
ahead.
you do this is this something you would recommend every day or maybe once in a while kinda situation?
Um, for me, it was more times than not, but not every single day. And I will
Okay.
be honest, if it's concert week, yeah, it might not be
Not so
happening.
much? Okay.
But
That's
it
fair.
also depends, right? Or
Yeah.
if we're in a great place and I'm like, yeah, let's just do this thing, you know. But I found that the more routine we could make it, the better, right?
Okay.
So it's not happening the first week of school because we don't know those routines yet. We haven't
Mhm.
gotten there. Um, might not happen concert week because we know what that week looks like or can
Mhm.
look like, but we're just getting those little things to give them a little bit of ownership. Right.
Okay.
So that's kind of one starting point. Going from there, let's going a little bit deeper, right? So you're rehearsing a piece, you cut the ensemble off in your head, you've got 7 things that went wrong. You know them, you could rattle them off. But pause for a second. Instead of saying that, say, "Okay, what did you all hear?" And then let them say, "Saxophones weren't together, bass drum was rushing. Like, let them try to figure out what are those things that just happened, and you
Okay.
could prompt them. You could say, tell me, what are two things that you heard that went really well, that repetition? Okay, what are two things that we need to go back and work on? And just like with the warm-ups, when you first ask it, they're going to just stare at you because they're going to be like, wait, what?
Well, it's making them
Why
think.
do they care?
Yeah.
Mhm.
And they're
Right.
self-analyzing and
Right. And you're
listening
making
across.
them think, which they might not have been doing, right? It
Mhm.
sounds weird to say, but they might not have really been thinking. They might have just been kind of going through the motions. And I think for a lot of the kids that happens,
Oh, yes.
especially if we don't require them to think. So maybe
Okay.
you prep it. You say, okay, we're going to do this rep. When we finish, I'm going to ask you to come up with three things that we need to work on. You finish the rep. Okay, quick, turn to your neighbor, tell them one of your things. Have that conversation. Okay, great. I need 3 volunteers now. Raise your hand. Tell me what are 3 things that we need to work on for that section. So you're getting them more actively involved. You know what they are. But then again, you also might not know, right? You
Yeah.
might not know that the third trumpets really don't know what's going on.
And that's very possible, especially if you have a large group
Yeah.
and kids are playing over that sound.
Mhm.
And I mean, you can also relate it to, your other educators. You got your think, pair, share that you're doing
Yeah.
in a music classroom. So it doesn't have to be a
Right.
core type situation.
No.
No, that's
Yeah.
fantastic.
Because
Okay.
like you said, it's getting them thinking. And then so we've got them to think. The think, pair, share gives everyone a chance to talk. And it's a real
Mhm.
safe way for them to talk, right? If you're just talking to the person next to you,
Yeah.
if you
That
really
and
have no idea, it's okay. I'm
yeah.
not cold calling, right? But
Yeah.
we're trying to set them up for success. And so we need to do it in a way that's going to be safe, and we need to scaffold it.
That makes
So
sense. Yeah, and they need that scaffolding, especially middle schoolers need that.
yeah.
So,
Oh yeah. Yeah.
I've
Yeah.
I've taught high school and middle school, and I know who can take something, with less structure and who can't, and
Mhm.
middle school is definitely the place the structure is needed for sure.
Yeah, but even if you are teaching high school and the students have only ever been in an ensemble situation where they're constantly told what to do, they might
Mhm,
not know how to say what what it is. They might not even feel like
mhm.
they can say what they hear or what they're noticing. So you have to build it up. You have to scaffold it.
Well,
Um,
and if they share that, like you were saying, you could then use their words, which may be kinda discombobulated, and help them develop their music vocabulary. How do
exactly.
we say what you're trying to say?
Yep.
So
What's the
that's a
musical way? Mhm.
all right, I like
Y
this.
Yeah,
Okay,
okay. So, we're gonna kinda keep building, right?
all right.
And honestly, some of the next things I would do is okay, as conductors, one of the first things we probably do is score study, right? I think I
Mhm,
remember that from how many college classes you have to know your score, you have to know exactly what you want it to sound like, you've gotta have this image in your mind, right? All of that stuff that we
mhm,
have to do as conductors. That's really great, but if we're the only ones who ever get to make those musical decisions, we're really denying the kids some opportunities. So I would try to find spots where I could really ask the ensemble, like, what do you think we should do here?
okay,
And so that might be, you're at the end of the piece. There's really nothing dynamically written. There's not much there. The composer hasn't given you too much information. This would be a spot where usually you would think to yourself, okay, maybe we should slow here. We want to crescendo a bit at this spot. You have it. But instead say to the ensemble, hey, how do you think we could make this section just have a little bit more feeling to it?
okay,
What could we do? Okay, somebody raises their hand. Well, what if we crescendoed here? All right, let's try it. You try that thing. Okay, that was cool. What's another thing that we could try? Maybe somebody else says, "Well, what if we diminuendo?" Okay, cool, let's try it. Try a section a couple different ways based on their suggestions, and then you say, "Okay, what do we think? Which one really seemed to give that emotional element that we were lacking here?"
mhm,
Let them decide. And here's the fun thing, thinking about like a teacher perspective. You've just tried that section of the piece multiple different ways. You're getting reps in,
mhm.
right? We're
That's
building
anytime they play, that's a good thing.
exactly. So we're getting the reps in. We're experimenting with different things, and then the students get to think about like, what should we actually do here? How can we um, make this really speak to what the piece needs to be?
Good, good.
So and we're building capacity. We're
Yeah.
building the ability for them to think about, like, how do musicians make these decisions, right? And then
Mhm.
what happens, a couple weeks later, somebody might raise their hand and be like, Miss Hoover, this part's boring. Can we do something here?" Like, "Oh, okay, sure."
I
Because
actually
you're
like it when those kids say those kind of things because that means
don't
they
you?
need more. Yeah,
Yeah, but it means they're thinking. They're
yeah,
thinking like musicians, and that's what we want. They're not just
absolutely.
being little, like, what are they? Rehearsal robots, you know?
Yeah.
They're actually thinking musically, and I think that's so valuable.
Well, I love what you just said about, asking them, how can we make this more interesting? We're going to be faced with a situation where at our school we have an advanced group. We call it our performance band, and it's multiple sections. We put it together to form a bigger performance band, and that's the group I run. And then my other co-band director, she does the younger 7, 8 band, and we're doing our assessment the March 13th and March 12th. And, we have that ready. In fact, we're at that point where we're trying not to plateau. But
Mhm.
then we have a couple little performances, and then we're doing our end of the year spring trip to Busch Gardens, which we are
Nice.
competing, and we're combining all the young ones with all the older ones. And so for my crew, it's going to be easier music. I'm not going to
Yeah,
lie.
yeah.
And so, I mean, it would be comparable to like maybe sight reading kind of
Mhm.
situation. And so I was thinking, when you were just mentioning, asking the kids, what can we do? That's a perfect type of music. Like, can we add some crescendos,
Yeah.
dynamics, maybe forte piano crescendos? And
Mhm.
one of the rules back when I taught jazz band class um, was that if it was unless if it was like certain pieces, you would always add if it was a note was longer than one beat, you'd put in a little mini forte piano crescendo to add a
Mhm.
little dry or direction kind of thing.
Yeah.
And what you're saying is it would actually make our piece that we're going to do for this next competition really sound better than it would be if it was just like a bland, you know,
Yeah.
playing notes and rhythms. It's
Yeah.
not really musical, but yeah, that excites me. I'm
Yeah,
looking
and
forward
I
to that.
think sometimes even just letting the kids describe something completely off the wall and goofy and trying it is okay too,
Oh,
because music is supposed to be fun. We're
absolutely.
supposed to be having fun when we do this. So if somebody suggests something crazy, you're like, "Well, let's try it," and, see what happens. One thing I used to do, and, um, there's these chorales online. Aaron Cole, Aaron with an Aaron Cole, and there's these 36 chorales. They're written out for every band instrument, and each student gets each part, the SATB.
Okay.
So I'd hand out these chorales, say, "Okay, put yourselves in groups of 4. I don't care who's what instrumentation, and I want you to take this chorale and do something with it." It was all stuff that they could play. It was pretty easy notes and rhythms, but there was usually no expression written in whatsoever. And I would encourage them just to work with a group of 4 and just do something with that. They just whatever they did, they couldn't come back and just play it flat. That was not an option. So, the first couple times we would do it, they would start with just like dynamic changes, or maybe you'll throw in some staccatos or slurs, a little articulation. But eventually kids started getting creative, and they'd come
Hmm.
back and they would play it like super peppy, like a circus march, or one group was like
All
they were
right.
they were trying to make it sound they're like, "We're trying to make it sound like a dirge." I'm like, "Oh, okay, well, there's a vocabulary word. That
All
sounds great."
right. Yeah.
But they started just kind of, like, thinking outside of the box, and it was really fun to see because, again, like, music. It's supposed to be fun, and it was
Yeah.
nice to have them, like, doing it in a way that they could put some of those creative things, and they could think like musicians, and even if it was completely wild, it was alright.
That's okay. There's
Yeah.
no I mean, you could take one piece and have a different performance of it every single time,
Yeah, yeah,
just by inflection. I mean, I know I know a lot of times, I tell our kids, there's the serious, like, or assessment. I don't know what they call it, assessment out there. I remember some places call it contest and festival, but
yeah.
um, I remember for me a music educator trying to really hone in on what the composer wanted,
Mhm.
opposed to some of her other concerts where it's like, all right, guys, we're gonna mess with this piece all over the
Yeah,
place.
yeah.
We got a piece that we even didn't play the beginning of the year because it was more difficult. I think it was either grade 3 or maybe even low 4. I actually can't remember, but it's a circus piece, and it's actually funny that
Mhm.
you mentioned that.
Yeah.
And we're gonna mess with it all over the place. It's gonna be so much fun. Can't wait
That's
for
so
it.
fun.
Yeah,
That's
yeah,
so fun. Yeah, and I asked the students, like, "What should we do? How should we what how can we make this more fun or different or interesting?" And yeah, I think it's just letting them express themselves musically because we don't always get to do that in the ensemble if we
yeah.
leave it up to us. So, here's a question. Have you ever encouraged your students to help pick the music?
I different years, it would be I would have a different kind of answer, but this year I got very lucky. So we don't have a huge band. We have,
Mhm,
probably about 115, 120.
mhm.
We're on track to be 160 next year, which is kinda nice. Um, but we have some very, very what's the right way of saying? Very excited, very they almost to the point where some of these middle schoolers wanna be band directors next year. And
Aw.
so they wanna pull out they wanna go through my music library, and I'm like,
Yeah.
"Okay, settle down. I just reorganized all of this this summer. It's clean." But no, we have some kids, like, there's this kid that has probably written 3 or 4 pieces that he wants the band to play,
Oh.
and I kinda say, "Okay, hold out. You gotta put things in perspective. Your audience here is also middle schoolers." So
Mhm.
30-second notes and some of these ranges aren't gonna work, but no, I'm so excited. There's so many of them that just I mean, like, they wanna do so much, like, instead of just doing a jazz band piece, they wanna do a jazz band piece with a vocal part, and
Yeah.
they wanna do the vocal part. They don't want any of the choir members to. They
Wow.
they wanna make it something special, which is awesome. I mean, I can't back away from that kinda energy. I
No.
mean, it's awesome when you have that. So, and in fact, I think we got 3 or 4. I think we had like 5 or 6 kids make all district, and 3 or 4 of them made first chair or second chair in the region.
Oh,
So that was
wow.
really special to me, and those really energetic.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
then we also have a special opportunity. We have our 8th graders are allowed to play in the marching band, and all of them, well, no, not even all of them but one, got that opportunity, and they see the high school band and
Yeah.
how well they're doing, and they're like, "I wanna be able to do this. Why can't we do this here?" It's like, well, technically, there's nothing holding a middle school band back from sounding just as good as a high school. You
Mhm.
know, it's
Yeah,
just you got a few things you got to work on. To push a little further. But now,
yeah.
oh gosh, now I forgot what the original question was. But no, I
Yeah,
do have kids that want to be involved in this process for sure.
that's awesome. Yeah, so I was thinking about, like, repertoire, right? Because that's something
Mhm.
else that I don't know, I love picking rep. I think it's just so much fun to study the scores and just to dig in, but that's also something that we can share that process with the students, you know, and I think to do this kind of thing well, it does take time because I'm not a real big fan of just like, okay, go to JW Pepper and see what you can find because it doesn't have a lot of direction. But I
Mhm.
think there's ways that we can, as teachers, kind of like talk students through, like, here's our process. Like, here's what I was thinking when I picked this piece. I noticed it had this and this, and well, it really needed to fit this need in our program. And so you can have those conversations with students where you're thinking about like and you're discussing what goes into picking repertoire and then from there give them some opportunities. One of the guests that we had on our podcast was Laura Johnson, and she's actually a Virginia. Well, at the time she was in Virginia, now she's in Minnesota. But
Okay.
she talked about this entire process that she had, where she would worked with the kids to come up with the criteria for the selection, and then they would have to do research and find pieces, and then they would pick a piece, and they had to like pitch it to the class, like this is why we think this is the piece that our band should play, and it has this, and it does, and it's just a really neat process of like getting them involved. But the fact that she made them think through like criteria, I think made it a really valuable experience. Now, your students you're talking about, the ones who are already pretty gung ho, I bet you
Mhm.
they have some of that already in their minds,
Oh,
right?
they
They're
they
probably
do.
thinking,
And even in class, I do explain the why. Why did I
yeah,
choose these? And I straight out, I told them, you guys do very well with marches. You're not as great on ballads. We don't practice chorales as much as we really
mhm,
should.
yeah,
Uh, but as a result of that, one of our pieces for assessment has some ballad-esque things in it, and we worked out some things. And the cool thing is we also and this is another thing. We had a lot of old instruments, and
Mm.
we just got approved for $80,000 worth of new equipment this year. We've gotten
Wow.
everything except for 14 or 15 trombones and 8 tubas. And
Wow.
just, oh my God, I can't tell you in the flutes and clarinets how much that made a difference.
Yeah.
Um, so because of that, tuning tendencies were more pure.
Mhm.
You have your saxophones, they're going to be sharp on the D, and you have your flutes, and just working out, like you need to alter the third just a little bit when you're making these chords. It just made it easier because it
Yeah.
wasn't a mechanical issue. You could be more expressive with better equipment.
Yeah.
So,
Oh, for sure. You
so,
know,
oh yeah,
as
go
you
ahead.
were talking, what could be really fun is you were saying how you do have those conversations with the students about,
Hmm.
like, how you picked it. Flip it next time, ask them, like, "Why do you think I picked this?" See what they come
Good
up
point.
with. See if they could find those things, those reasons. That'd be really interesting to see if they would be able to, like,
Oh, I'm sure I get all
articulate.
kinds of answers.
Oh, I'm sure.
Answers that I wouldn't even, and for me, I tend to be a very open guy. I I do tend to be a little more, I don't wanna say OCD, I'm not OCD. I am organized, let's put it like that, at
Mhm.
work. I'm very organized, I am
Yes.
firm when I need to, but I also understand that the relationship is one of the biggest parts, and so I do take a moment to be a adult sometimes with them.
Yeah.
And you'd be surprised all these ideas that come out. And sometimes as a result of having that kind of personality, I have to reel things in a little bit.
Yeah.
But no, these kids are so creative. They're so
Mhm.
smart. And
Yeah.
even the kids that, maybe they have a 504, or maybe they have ADHD out of the cra-
Mhm.
crazy world, which I definitely have to deal with.
Mhm.
Um, these are good kids. I mean,
Yeah.
these are
That
really good kids.
that's
So
it, though. They're so creative. We don't wanna stifle that.
absolutely.
If we only we keep them in that little box of, like, "This is what music is, and this is how we do band," then we stifle the creativity, and we tell them, like, there's only one way. So just any little ways that we can let that be part of what we do, I think is so valuable.
It is, and honestly, I wish I had a even bigger toolbox to foster that creativity. I also, teach beginning guitar and second level guitar. Second
Oh,
The
fun.
second level guitar, it's very clear there's a connection relationship. Level 1 guitar is, more of your general population. They don't have that culture of ensembleness, and
Yeah.
there's definitely, as much as I hate to say it, because I don't ever wanna say, some players get weeded out,
Mm.
and because and I work in a city school, so, there are different background challenges, money, attitudes, I mean, family life, there's all kinds of things, but
Yeah.
a successful year I would say would be definitely have a great relationship with me, have learned, what the standards say, but also, have a desire to move forward and have some growth and see at
Yeah.
least all it would be great if all of them moved up to the next level, uh, but at least a good majority of them would. And we
Yeah.
don't have a dedicated guitar teacher at the middle school. We do at the high school, and she's phenomenal. And I tell them that if
Yeah.
you continue with guitar, you are making some of the best choices of your life. But for me, the toolbox of the creativity in an area where I wasn't initially trained, I started learning
Mhm.
guitar when I got asked to teach beginning guitar,
Yeah.
and that's kinda how it worked out. So it was a learning experience for me, and now I'm like 5 years, maybe, I mean, it's been on and off from different years, but,
Yeah.
um, it's all
Mm.
music though, so a lot of those
Right.
concepts
Right.
transfer.
Yeah, it's all music, and like you said, the goal, I think, is to get kids to continue being musical in whatever that looks like for
Mhm.
them. And I think if we can make sure that they have the tools and the desire and the excitement to do that, then we're doing our job,
Yeah,
right? Because we know music makes good humans.
it does.
It
Just
just does.
straight out. It's a good juju.
Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah, and they might not all be in our school music program. Sure, we hope they are.
yeah,
We
oh,
hope that
yeah,
they all can
absolutely.
find their spot, but just I think having that as part of their lives, it's going to only be a positive thing.
Absolutely, absolutely. I can't wait to see these kids again next year, and I'll see them again. And I work at this. I mean, literally, our high school's right across the street from ours, so I'm gonna see them again one way, whether I
Yeah.
want to or not. So, but no,
Whether they want to or not. Yeah.
exactly. But no, I can't tell you, and I'm sure you've heard this many times. Uh, band, guitar, whatever. It's their favorite class. I mean, it really
Mhm.
is. They come to school because they're friends and class.
Mhm.
So,
Yep.
um, yeah,
Yeah. It's a good thing that we do.
yeah,
It
absolutely.
really is.
Okay, so let's keep on going. Tell me,
Okay.
what else? What nuggets of treasure or gold do you have?
Okay. I guess the last thing. So I cheated. I totally made a list before we came on today.
Please.
Because I know that I tend to go like in circles and yeah. So it's like, here's your little list. Don't forget to talk about these things. So I guess the last thing on my list of like things to think about when you're trying to make this more student-centered is just think about your concerts, right? Now, we'll say assessment and festival, those are kind of their own
Yeah.
those are their
This
own
is how we're
animal.
gonna do this. Yeah.
Right, I know, and we're not gonna talk about that now, but I'm thinking about, like, other performances that you have. How can you get students involved in that, right?
Mhm.
And this can be anything from help letting them design the cover for the concert program. I've had some great artistic students in the past who, say, "Hey, who wants to design a cover?" The hands just shoot up, or letting them design like posters or any kind of like advertising that you'll do. I've often had kids do that. Um, let them volunteer. Who's interested in this? Who thinks they have some of these skills? I've I remember when I first started teaching how I would like print myself little notes to read in between the pieces. And then I remember the day that I realized, wait, I could make the kids read that.
Mhm.
It's like, but then to make it even better, the kids could write those things too.
Okay.
So I don't need to write what they're going to say in between. The kids can write it. The kids can introduce the songs at the concert, and it's taking stuff off my plate, but it's also giving them that little bit of ownership.
Yeah.
Um, so it could be something where in rehearsal you say, "Hey, who would be interested in writing something to introduce these pieces?" And you give, whoever volunteers, or you could make it something where the whole class gets involved and everybody writes an introduction for a piece. Sometimes if I do the whole class, I'll say, "You pick a piece and just write, 3 or 4 sentences. Say something about why, why you think we're playing this piece, what does the composer want the audience to know, and then what do you think the audience should listen for?" Maybe give them 3 little prompts,
Okay.
have them write the introductions, and then maybe you vote on one that actually gets read at the concert, or have them work in groups, but get them to be involved in that part of it. With hopefully you've had conversations with the students about like what the music's about
Good.
and the composer's intent and things like that. Hopefully they already have that information. Then they can put it together to write that little blurb that they read at the concert. You could have kids if you have, you were talking about your little group of
Yeah.
go-getters. Maybe they want to put together some pre-show entertainment, right? Maybe they want to do some little like ensemble type stuff and either stand in the lobby or stand like in front of the stage before the show starts. Just play some little tunes that they put together. Give them the opportunity to play like that. Is there a student who could be the MC for the concert? Somebody
Mhm.
who could just be the announcer. Like there's lots of little ways you can get the students involved. It just makes it more meaningful for them, and it takes stuff off of your plate because that's
Oh, make it more
also
entertaining too.
yeah, yeah. So just kind of make it more fun. Let them be involved with it, and then ask them, say, "Hey, we got a concert coming up. Who thinks they might be able to help with some things? What are some ways that we could pull this together? I don't know if you're somebody who like decorates your stage or auditorium. What
Mhm.
are some ways we could decorate to make this look festive or spring-like or but just have those conversations. Like, you don't have to make all these decisions by yourself. You don't have to do all these things by yourself.
Mhm.
You've got kids, and even when I was teaching elementary school, those students would write the song introductions, and they would stand up and they'd read them, and they'd be so
Oh,
proud,
yeah,
and
mom and dad, I mean, "Oh, it's my baby. Yeah, woo."
oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Yep, and, while they're doing that, I'm making sure percussion is set up, I'm making
Mhm.
sure that,
Oh, check, check, check.
fixing this read and the yeah, right? But it just gets their voice. Nobody needs to hear my voice. Nobody cares. Let them hear from the students.
It's funny that you mentioned that. Um, More and more directors, at least I don't know, maybe band directors, maybe it's less. I guess it depends on the school, but a lot to me is a lot of band directors don't want to talk as much. They just want to like, let's get the show on the road. But and I remember being a young director trying to talk, and then I took a slight, side. Yeah, I would say something, and then I would lose track of what I was saying.
Mhm.
I don't wanna do that again.
No.
So, yeah, you're right, this is good stuff, good stuff, having these
Yeah,
kids involved with that. So, and
right.
like you said, it's child-centered and,
Mhm.
gets the attention in different ways, and it's good teaching, good instruction, good, PR even, you know?
Yeah, absolutely.
I
Letting
Oh, go ahead.
Having the kids be the center of your program is big, and even just thinking about the language of it's not my band program. It's I mean, it's theirs, if anything. I'm just the one that, well, I get paid, but I mean, I'm just I'm the adult in the
Yeah.
room, but it's their band program. How can we really put the focus on what they do so that they're the most
Mhm.
important thing and that it's meeting their needs, and how can I best facilitate that?
Yeah, and I mean, I think one of my former parents kinda spotlighted. It's a reflection on you based upon how your kids do. And honestly, I was kinda going with, the performance side of things, but, um, you know, parents know that you do good teaching when the kids are very thorough, they have an opinion about things, they
Yeah.
treat each other with professionalism and respect and,
Mhm.
assuming I can talk here, sorry, stumbling on my words, but, um and they can see it in the love what they have. I mean,
Yeah.
it's great. I mean, honestly,
Yeah.
my high school band director, and I started really late. I started violin, 3rd grade, didn't have a very good teacher, but we also only met like 30 minutes every week, and
Mm,
it just
mhm.
wasn't it was one of those elementary school things. And then I didn't start into the rest of the music until like 2nd semester, ninth grade. And it was the love of friends being in there and just
Yeah.
really grabbing onto the love of the music, um, and he let us be. Now there were times I wish he was a little more structured, just in the sense because there were a couple hooligans here and there, but,
Yeah.
no, I learned so much from him, and, he let me he made me a drum major way back in the day when I thought other
Yeah.
people were in a better situation, but, no, it was really nice, it was really good. So I definitely thank him for that. Mr. McQuoken, if you're out there, thank you. So, um,
Yeah.
yeah. So, well, those are all awesome, uh, recommendations, and,
Yeah.
is there any other words of wisdom you would like to.
I mean, that's the biggest thing is just take that again from what I said at the beginning. Think about, all the various things that you do and ask yourself, where could the students take some of this? Where could they insert their voice? Where could they make some musical decisions? How could they be more actively involved in the process of music making and
Mhm,
not just on the end part of it where whatever comes out of their instruments.
mhm,
So how could they be more actively involved in the process? And you'll also probably find out this very much aligns with the National Core Arts Standards,
mhm,
right? The standards are all very student forward with student language. Like the students will
mhm.
develop a criteria for selecting music. The students will apply strategies to, perform. And so, we're thinking in this way. And I think it'll make an impact on your program. You'll have kids who feel more musical, who feel more connected, and hopefully will feel like musicians throughout their lives. Like we don't need more music majors, but what we do need is a lot more amateur musicians. If we had a
Yeah.
world full of amateur musicians, it'd be a really, really special
Oh,
place.
yeah. They would all love everything that we do.
Mhm.
So,
Yeah.
alright. Well, cool. Now, I gotta ask you too. Okay, so you brought up some great points and everything. You also you're involved professionally. You have, your own podcast, you have, your own book.
Mhm.
Can you tell me a little bit about that?
Yeah.
Tell me about it. I mean,
Yep. So the book and the podcast are both called Pass the Baton, which which is exactly what it sounds like, the idea of passing that baton to the students. It's geared for really all music teachers. The book is written by myself and Catherine Finch. She's an elementary general music teacher in the Chicago area. So we kind of put her general music knowledge along with my ensemble knowledge together to make sure that we really were speaking to everyone. That came out in 2020, which
okay.
wasn't that a wild
Oh
ride.
yeah, right after COVID.
But yeah, like right smack in the middle, but that's okay. And then several months later, we were like, we were hearing from people that they were doing things, and that like this, that we
Oh,
weren't the only crazy ones talking about student ownership in music education. And we figured, this is the perfect time to be sharing some of those voices. So we started the podcast. The podcast is Pass the Baton, empowering students in music education. And most of our episodes are interviews. They're interviews with teachers who are just doing incredible things to think about making their classrooms more student-centered, really putting the students first, thinking with that ownership mindset. We've had incredible guests. As a band person, Jody Blackshaw was like my fangirl moment when we got to interview Jody, talking about how she thinks about creativity in music. We recently talked to another Northern Virginia did I say that right? Angela Ammerman came on to talk about recruiting and how you can even do that with a student-centered lens, and really involve the students in recruiting for your ensembles. So it's been a lot of fun things to meet all these different people. I'm sure you know this from doing
mhm.
your work too, just meeting different
Oh,
people,
it's fabulous.
hearing their stories, and then being able to share them. It's
It
awesome.
is a lot of fun, and you and by the way, this is for the audience out here. We will put those links in the descriptions here. So just give us a little bit of time; it'll happen. So you can check this out. So,
Perfect.
and is I'm assuming the connection. Is there a little bit of a connection with the podcast with the book as well? I mean, it's the same title, right? Essentially.
Pretty much the same title, same topic. Yeah. In the book, we talk about, again, the book is mostly Catherine and I's perspectives on how to do these different things. We talk about what we call the 6 qualities of student ownership. Um, and then like the podcast is just supporting that,
Okay.
hearing
Well, that's
other
good
great
because
stories.
they
Mhm.
read your book and they can make connections. Plus, they can just ask questions. They can interact with your
Yeah,
socially and be in this music education community, which is
exactly.
great. And I have to tell you, I can't lie. I'll put a question out for music educators, and I'll get like 25 replies in the first 2 minutes or something with
Yeah.
things everything from sight reading to opinions, and
Mhm.
sometimes the opinions aren't the same, but that's okay. They all mean well,
It's
and
part of life.
people are
Mhm.
super I mean, they will give you resources, they'll give you free stuff,
Yeah.
they will I mean, it's just amazing. I love the music education community. It's so
Oh, yeah.
thoughtful, and it's pretty awesome. Just the fact that it's music
Mm.
is pretty awesome.
Yeah.
So
Well, I mean, social media. Oh, so honestly, Catherine, my co-author and co-host, we met on Twitter.
oh, no way.
Like no
Like
joke, we met on Twitter.
before X
When it was
when
Twitter,
it's
and then
real
when it
Twitter.
was a place that was
Okay,
yeah, I mean, this was like 2016, I think. 2016 we met.
okay.
And then we met in person, like in real
Oh,
life. The first time was 2 weeks before we handed in the book to
wow.
the publisher.
No way.
Yeah, we wrote the entire thing, like, between Zoom and Google
Okay.
Docs. Yeah,
Alright.
and then we met in person, and it was like the December, I don't know, 28, it was right before we turned the book in, yeah.
Okay. Wow.
And I just remember telling people, I'm like, I'm going to meet my co-author," and they're like, "You're what?" Well, yeah, we haven't
Where
met in person.
so really you just came across Twitter's you
We
commented or
were,
something?
we were both doing a book study, like an online book study for it's a book called The Innovator's Mindset by George Couros, which is still
Okay.
one of my favorites. And it's not a music education book, it's an education thing. And we just happened to be like the 2 music teachers who were involved, and there were Twitter chats, things like that, and we just got talking.
Hey.
Because we were both kind of in the same place where it's not like we were struggling, but we were both trying to figure out how to do this thing. Like, we knew something was missing in our classrooms. We knew that we needed to figure out this ownership piece, but we were not sure how, because nobody was thinking this way in music ed back in 2016.
Mhm.
And we just started like bouncing ideas off each other, and
Oh, that's the best way.
one thing led to another.
Yeah. Well, congratulations with that. That's
Thanks.
awesome. And I like I said, I told you earlier that I am definitely going to get the book and check it out,
Awesome.
and I'll
Well,
go
thank you.
from there. Yeah, no problem, no
Love
problem.
it.
I love doing that. So, all right. Well, I know we're trying to wrap things up here, but is there a way people can contact you?
Yep, absolutely. So I am on Facebook, just Theresa Hoover. Instagram, it's musical Theresa. Um, the website for the book is passthebatonbook.com. There's a contact form on there. I think I told you where to find the podcast. Yeah, I mean, I do have my blog too, which like I'm gonna just be honest, as a PhD student, it's rare that I have a chance to write a
Oh, of
blog post,
course.
but that's okay. It's there. So the blog is called Off the Beaten Path in Music. But yeah, find me
Okay.
online. I love to talk, as you can see. So I'm happy to chat and just yeah, I love it.
Well, super. Well, thank you for joining us on the Music Educator live stream.
Of course.
Definitely appreciate it. It's great to meet you and learn about these fun tactics and
Yeah.
resources. So, all right. Well, thanks. All right.
Mhm.
And for everybody back home watching this, I just want to thank you so much for joining the Music Educator live stream. I'm grateful for your participation and enthusiasm. And I hope you enjoyed the session and found it both informative and inspiring. With that said, everybody have a great week, and we'll see you next time.